The U.S. Navy, like its sister military services, is facing considerable budgetary challenges in 2016. But what makes 2016 a very interesting budget year for the Navy is that leaders are going to make two key decisions that will have a lasting impact upon the fleet. The first decision is going to be on the USS George Washington, which is the Navy's 6th Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. That ship is due for its refueling and complex overhaul in 2016, and leaders in 2015 indicated to Congress that they might not have sufficient funds to carry through with that refueling process. And so they might actually decommission the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier about 25 years prematurely. So that's a decision that the Navy leaders will make in 2016, whether or not to decommission that carrier. The second decision is going to have a dramatic impact upon the small surface combatant fleet, a force of about 52 ships in total once they're done with acquiring that fleet. The current program of record is the Littoral Combat Ship, but that program has come under significant criticism by lawmakers and government watchdogs for lacking firepower and sufficient survivability if that ship were to get into a major battle at sea. So the Navy has already taken a pause to examine options in 2014 about how it's going to carry out with the rest of that program. And in the 2016 budget, the leaders will reveal their decision on whether to carry on with the LCS program as it stands, whether they're going to do a modified version of LCS, or whether they're going to pursue something completely differently and build out 20 ships of that new variation, whatever it might be. So that's another key decision that's going to come down in the 2016 budget. The U.S. Navy is facing dramatic spending cuts in 2016 unless Congress acts. And one of the sacrifices that they have indicated to Congress that they're willing to make is to decommission early a U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the USS George Washington. Now, in 2016, that carrier will have to either be funded for defueling and its complex overhaul, or the Navy will have to decide to decommission it 25 years early. And that would actually save them $6 billion, but that would also entail standing down the air wing that is associated with the George Washington. The Navy is already short an aircraft carrier because they decommissioned the USS Enterprise in 2013, and that was actually their first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, and that was decommissioned as planned following a 50-year service life. And in 2016, if the Navy decides to decommission the George Washington, it will only have 9 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers in its force, 2 below the mandate under U.S. law. Navy leaders are facing quite a conundrum in its 2016 budget. And the Congress, lawmakers have indicated that they're quite incensed over this issue because they don't want to see the U.S. Navy fall below that 11 carrier requirement. And so they've indicated that they're willing to do what it takes to make sure that that refueling of George Washington gets done. There's a lot of anticipation over what the Navy is going to decide for its small surface combatant program. That's seen as the successor program to the current program of record, the Littoral Combat Ship. And with 20 ships at stake, it's easy to see why people are very interested in the Small Surface Combatant, or SSC. Now, to understand a little bit more about what all the fuss is about, we have to go back and talk about the Littoral Combat Ship program. That program was originally planned to be a 52-ship class to replace the Oliver Hazard Perry frigates as well as the Avenger-class minesweeping force. That number was recently capped by the Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel, who told the Navy to take a pause to evaluate LCS because that program has come under fire by government watchdogs and It lacks some firepower and survivability in a major battle at sea. So the Navy is currently building up to 32 LCS, and then the remainder of the force, the 20 ships, is going to turn into what's called the Small Surface Combatant Program, or SSC. The Navy in 2014 assembled a 9-person task force to evaluate options for how to pursue the SSC program. That task force was evaluating the current LCS program, the C-frames, and the mission modules that go on board that ship. They were also looking at a modified version of LCS, meaning that it would be either upgunned, up-armored, somewhat modified to perhaps reflect more of a frigate-like capability. And they also surveyed industry globally to find out whether there were other options beyond LCS, perhaps other frigate designs, corvettes, to get a feel for what potentially they could go and pursue for the SSC program. Now, the task force in late 2014 was busy updating the rest of the Department of Defense leadership on the results of their findings. And based upon those findings, the Navy in its 2016 budget is expected to reveal a decision that will impact how it will pursue the remaining LCS program, as well as what it will do for the 20-ship SSC program. The ships that the Navy procures in FY 2019 will be the lead ships of the Small Surface Combatant program. So the decision that the Navy will make in its FY 2016 budget will lay out the foundation for those ships and the follow-on ships in the 2020s. The Navy has been very tight-lipped about the results of its Small Surface Combatant Task Force findings, and that's not surprising given that it will have a dramatic impact upon the future acquisition of the Small Surface Combatant Force for the next 2 decades. And some people think that the Navy's ultimate decision will actually reflect having a modified LCS as the Small Surface Combatant fleet of the future. And they're anticipating that decision to come down through the budget, and that budget will also reflect how the Navy will build out the remaining 9 ships of the current LCS program.